What's up everyone, I'm Eldridge, and today we're gonna take a look at the premium tier 8 Japanese cruiser Atago. Now I know they just removed this ship from the store today in anticipation of all the newbies coming in with the open beta, but I had like 80% of this video already done on Sunday. I just didn't think I was in any kind of a hurry. I didn't know that they were gonna take out the ship. I only found out about that this morning, and because the video was almost done already, I was just like, screw it, I'll upload it anyway. Maybe someone still finds it useful. This is also not going to be a full review, because for a full review I would have to play 10 games in the Atago. Right now a game in the Atago is ridiculous because it consists of Atagos, Warships, and a couple of people who have already made it to tier 6. That is of course not at all a fair representation of this ship, and as such I'm going to have to wait until people are a bit more high tier so I can test this ship out for real. In the meantime we can still look at the stats and some of the peculiarities about this ship. We are of course comparing the Atago to the Mogami and the New Orleans. Hit point wise, the Atago and Mogami definitely beat out the New Orleans. However, it has to be said that all Japanese cruisers have really bad citadels. Their citadels are huge, comprising probably 50% of the ship, whereas American cruisers have much smaller citadel zones. Then again, Japanese cruisers are also much lower profile, whereas American cruisers generally are pretty high profile and have pretty big hull hit zones. And as such, I don't think any of these ships have a real advantage when it comes to survivability. They can all get one-shot by battleships, and even by other cruisers. In the category of speed, the picture becomes a little bit clearer, as the Atago definitely has the highest top speed, but also the biggest turning circle and the longest rudder shift time. However, with that 4-second shorter rudder shift time and the slightly smaller turning circle, the Mogami just beats out the Atago. The New Orleans turns really well, but loses 2 knots top speed as compared to the Japanese competition. The concealment characteristics of all 3 of these ships are very similar, with only very slight differences. The Atago has the slightly better surface detection range, but the worst air detection range of all 3. But with around 12 kilometers of surface detection range, all 3 of these ships are fine, and their guns outrange their detectability range, which is always important. Now looking at guns, the picture is very clear. The Atago is basically armed like the Miyoko was at tier 7. Now that isn't necessarily bad, she still has 10 guns, which is great because it gives her 1 more gun than the New Orleans has. And that's good because the New Orleans has a slightly faster rate of fire, and so if the Atago only had 9 guns, it would quite drastically fall below the New Orleans in DPS. As it stands though, it does more DPS with high explosive ammunition. It should also be noted that the Atago's guns are in 5 turrets as opposed to the New Orleans' 3 turrets. Knocking out one of the New Orleans' turrets drastically drops its DPS by 1/3, whereas the Atago, upon losing a turret, only loses 20% of its DPS. However, both of these ships look really silly compared to the Mogami, with its 15 guns and 6 rounds per minute. Despite only having 155mm guns, the Mogami just does so much damage with high explosive rounds. Obviously, since some of the latest patches, armor piercing works again, so if you want to use more armor piercing ammunition, the Mogami is actually not the best ship for this. The Atago on the other hand doesn't have a choice and has to go for the sniping playstyle. Can definitely keep up in it though. It should also be noted that for a Japanese cruiser, the Atago has a really good turret traverse time and a 16% chance to set her target on fire, which can make her pretty good at harassing those battleships. The Atago has exactly the same torpedo loadout as the Mogami, the only difference being in where these torpedoes are located on the ship. On the Mogami, both launchers are sort of more set toward the rear, which really limits how you can fire your torpedoes. On the Atago, one of your launchers is set so you can fire it to the front, and one is set so you can fire it to the back. That means it's sometimes a little bit more difficult to get both salvos on a target, but it does allow for some really clutch torpedo play without having to expose your entire broadside to the enemy. The Atago's anti-aircraft really isn't that good for a tier 8 cruiser. I mean, it loses out to the Mogami, and the Mogami isn't anything to write home about. The New Orleans, being a World War II American cruiser, of course has a million anti-aircraft guns, because the Americans loved anti-aircraft guns. And so it has more than 3 times the anti-aircraft DPS than the Atago. Secondary guns on cruisers as always are pretty negligible, but all 3 of these ships have very similar armaments with only slight differences in ranges. And it is nice that the Atago's secondary guns engage at 5.5 kilometers. That can sometimes give you the upper hand over a destroyer. In the category of survivability, all 3 of these ships are so similar that it's really impossible to say which one is better. Seeing how the New Orleans has much smaller citadel targets, but presents a larger target overall, and the Atago and Mogami having more hit points, but at the same time being practically entirely made of citadel, just kind of puts these ships on the same sort of pedestal when talking about survivability. Generally, in all 3 of these ships, you rather don't want to get hit that much. In the category of speed, the Mogami takes the point for having 35 knots top speed, a very respectable 750 meter turning circle, and a 9.3 second rudder shift time. Top notch for a tier 8 ship. Once again, nobody scores in detectability. None of them are that good that they propel the ship to new heights, yet unseen by ships that came before it. The category of guns, as always when the Mogami is included, is won by the Mogami. That 3900 HE DPS and 4950 AP DPS is just unbelievably strong. With 6 rounds per minute, you can really pummel into your opponent, and on average set them on fire 1.5 times per salvo. It's so very strong. However, it should be said that at tier 8, 155mm guns are no longer anything special. Every other ship that isn't a destroyer has already upgraded to 203mm, and the armor just keeps stacking up and up, so a lot of the time you will not be able to use your AP ammunition to effect. However, that barely matters when you have almost double the high explosive DPS of any other ship on your tier. The Atago still definitely has decent guns though, and can absolutely keep up with the New Orleans in firepower. And seeing how she's a premium ship, that does make her quite impressive at tier 8. Now the Torpedoes I personally find fantastic, because I loved the Torpedoes on the Mogami but was very disappointed by the firing arc, and the firing arc on the Atago's Torpedoes is so incredibly good. However, both of these ships are going to score 1 point because they have excellent torpedoes. 10 kilometers range is great, they're fast, they do a lot of damage, and they have quite a significant amount of them. In anti-aircraft there's of course no contest. The New Orleans has so much DPS, and therefore makes a really good escort ship for battleships. With secondary guns on cruisers being as negligible as they are, the final score is 1 point for the Atago, 3 points for the Mogami, and 1 point for the New Orleans. And that to me does seem pretty accurate. I would say the Atago is not as good as the Mogami, but it is definitely a solid cruiser at tier 8, and seeing how it's a premium ship, that just makes it even better. It's a fun tier 8 cruiser to play, and on top of that you make a lot of credits with it. If you're looking for a premium ship and the Murmansk tier 5 is too low tier for you, and the Atlanta too specialized, the Atago is a really good choice. That is it for this quick preview. As soon as people reach higher tier and I can actually get 10 adequate games played in the Atago, I will do so and give this ship a full review, but until that happens, this will have to be enough. And do you have any feedback? What's your opinion about the Atago? Have you bought it already? How does it play for you? Tell me about it in the comments. Next World of Warships video will be my first in a series of map tactics video, starting with the map islands. But until then, I've been Eldritch Master Donkey, and I'll see you in another video.